Welcome back, everyone, to the 4th episode of the Socratic Cinema Podcast. My name is Charlie Heatherly.
I'm Hallie Phillips.
My name's Casey Clark.
And I'm James Delicio.
And this time we watched an absolutely delightful movie by the name of Spirited Away.
Spirited Away was directed by Hayao Miyazaki. It won an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature the year it came out, which I'm forgetting what year it was.
No clue.
But Spirited Away, oh man, it's a delightful little animated film that centers around a young girl named Chihiro who's moving to a new city, a new school, and she's feeling nervous about it. On the drive of their move, Chihiro and her parents visit an abandoned amusement park where they find a feast waiting for them. Chihiro's parents dig in, but Chihiro's a little apprehensive about it. This ends up casting a spell on her parents, turning them into pigs, and in order to rescue them, Chihiro must enter the spirit world and work in a bathhouse for spirits, so that she can free her parents. And during her time working there, she meets a whole gang of kooky spirits. There's a young boy named Haku, who's sort of a mysterious kind of supporting role. There's a whole bunch of other spirits. I don't know where I went with that one. And in the end after going on several misadventures in the bathhouse, Chihiro eventually does turn her parents back into humans, and they all carry on with life. Chihiro has grown and is now ready to accept the move head on.
They live happily ever after.
They do.
Yeah.
And Hallie, would you like to give us your thoughts?
My thoughts on this movie, well, I don't really have much because I enjoyed it so much. I think that's the problem with all of us, is that we were so drawn into the whimsical fantasticalness of this movie that we never really stopped to analyze the deeper roots of it. But that's what's so amazing about it, is because I think one of the main features of why people are so drawn to fandoms or to movies or to enterprises is because of that capability a movie or a TV show has to draw people into a completely different world and still make it somewhat similar and unique experience.
Mm-hmm. I mean, totally. The movie is above all else an experience, and it's sort of hard to talk about it because it's such a lovely film visually. And so much of the magic of it is brought on through the medium of film. Like, I don't think Spirited Away could be anything else but a movie. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to its insane quality. It is a 2D animated movie, so compared to a lot of other films at the time, which were starting to get into 3D animation, it has this sort of classic and, like, just, you can feel the work and the joy and the sweat and the tears that people put into it, and it transfers into, like, this fairy tale nature of it all, where people are trying to show basically how it was to be a child, and both the joy they felt from that and the fright that can sometimes happen of it, because it is a coming of age story. So we get to see Chihiro as she sort of grows up in this mystical, magical world, and it really hits home for a lot of people because it combines all of the aspects that especially we as teenagers feel, in our own burgeoning worlds. I mean, we're sort of in this place where we're in between being a child and an adult. So I personally connected a lot to Chihiro and her journey throughout the entire film.
Yeah, I completely agree. While I was watching it, it was very hard for me to accept that this movie didn't have to make sense. Because in the first maybe 30 minutes, you see all these events happening, like how Chihiro's family go into this giant it's like a structure. They go into a tunnel, but there's benches and everything, and then they come on to the outside and they can see this river, and you can see Chihiro's confusion, and I personally felt her confusion. And so I feel like that is, for me, how I felt like the movie was structured. Whatever Chihiro was feeling, that is how they wanted the audience to feel as well. When she first enters the spirit world, as the audience, you don't you don't think anything that when Haku, who has just found her, like, makes sense. Like, none of the rules make any sense, and everything's kind of overwhelming, and as the audience, but you can also see that that's how Chihiro is also feeling. And then how the tone kind of shifts throughout the movie, throughout her misadventures, is just very interesting as well.
Yeah, oh man, I loved this movie. It really gives off this feeling of nostalgia. Like, even if you haven't seen the movie before, it feels like you're almost coming home to something familiar and warm and just charming. The world, it feels so real and well built. Like, it feels very lived in. Like, it's very easy to believe, like, yeah, this is how the spirit world works. All of its obscure rules and you know, things you have to do to fit in, like Casey was talking about. It just helped make it all feel a little more believable, yet at the same time, you know, like, you're only getting a small piece of, I guess, the world that Miyazaki has built in this movie, and I thought that was amazing. It's just a delight of a movie.
It makes you happy when you watch it, and I think that's
Yes.
definitely the mark of a very, very good movie. Like, there's so much attention to detail put into the animation. Like, you can look in any single frame, and you can see things happening in the background or little details that didn't necessarily need to be there. And it's a labor of love. And for us, the labor of love is a very interesting experience that we have to take in because we are American teenagers. The movie is an incredibly Japanese film. I mean, all of the spirit world is based off of Japanese mythology, to my knowledge.
Shinto,
Something
yeah.
or other. We might be entirely wrong, so maybe don't take us on that. But it contradicts sort of a lot of what American teenagers began to feel during their teenage years. The movie's very, like, rules are important and you should follow them. But we see in a lot of teenage movies, in America specifically, high school movies, that breaking the rules is always seen as the cool thing to do. There's this fantastic movie named Booksmart that came out. So very good.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Not sponsored. Wish we were. But there's this movie Booksmart, and it was all about these straight-A students learning how to break the rules and actually have a fun time. Well, Spirited Away sort of contradicts that, where it's like, instead of worrying about life so much, you can rely on rules in order to add structure to your life, and if you live by them, then that is how you get an enjoyable life.
Yeah, I sort of see what you're saying. Like, in Chihiro's time in the bathhouse, she has to follow all these seemingly obscure and strange rules in order to fit in and not be, you know, kind of ostracized by the other spirits. You know, whether it's Haku telling her, oh, you don't breathe while you're crossing this bridge or else everyone will know you're human. And things like that, were all, yeah, they give this feeling that, like, rules are something that you can depend on. Yet at the same time, I think you could also say that the kind of bombardment of these strange and unfamiliar rules she's getting, it could almost be related to, like, how a teenager might feel entering the adult world. Like, suddenly there's a whole new set of rules we have to play by. It's completely foreign to us, much how the spirit world is foreign to Chihiro. So I think that's the whole role that rules and customs play in the movie is really interesting to me.
And there's so many other interesting themes throughout the movie. And one of them that I wanted to ask you guys about is sort of the duality of every single character. Because when we were all watching, we tried to get this 7 Deadly Sins theory going. It didn't work, because every single character represents more than one of those sins. But they're also good characters as well. Like, I wanted to ask you guys about what you think No Face represents, because he's sort of the embodiment of that duality, where he's both generous and kind, what we see near the end of the film, sort of, but also incredibly greedy. So what do you guys think about that sort of dual nature of him?
I think he kind of represents despair. Because as James was saying, this is this new world that, you know, that we're experiencing. But I think he represents despair throughout all of it. Because you can see kind of prominent themes like greed or, you know, all those other things. But I think he really represents despair in all of it. Like the aloneness and the despair he needs. Because he needs to reach out through greediness, through all of that. And I just think he represents despair because I really, you know, felt along with him what he really wanted all along and what he needed to get to do that.
Yeah, he was kind of a symbol of loneliness, I think. Like throughout the movie, the bathhouse is bustling, right? The spirit world is very tight packed, and kind of busy nonstop. But then No Face is always outside. He's always alone, and he's desperately trying to reach out to Chihiro. But he's always on his own, and so I think despair is a good way to put it. He's I think he wants more than anything, almost like companionship, and you sort of see that arc for him throughout, throughout. I mean, he has his own little story arc scene. That's one thing I want to talk about, is the structure of the movie is really interesting to me. But he has one sort of story arc in which he makes his way into the bathhouse and begins eating people and spirits and everything he can get his hands on. And he sort of transforms from this quiet, timid, lonely spirit into this enormous, ravenous beast that Chihiro then has to kind of tame and bring back down to size. And I think that was really interesting how in his attempt to gain some sort of substance in the spirit world, like some sort of place of belonging, he kind of went overboard, and it almost turned into an extreme of consumption, and he kind of went from 0 to 100, I guess is what I'm trying to say. About what any else do you guys think? That's my take.
I would agree. I agree with both of your guys' points. I think that he truly is lonely. Like, all he wants is to be appreciated, and all he wants is to be accepted. Which is why the scene when he goes to Zeniba's house is very important. When I don't remember exactly what she says, but it's she basically said that, "Oh, you're like a good helper. I'd love it if you'd stick around and help me." And you can see that he's truly happy in those scenes. And just to circle back to, if we're trying to go with the theme of all these characters represent different people going into the adult world, I feel like No Face would represent the person that only works for other people. Like, he completely puts aside his I don't know their own happiness for other people, because they can only find happiness in the acceptance of other people, which is why when he gets rejected by Chihiro, he just goes crazy. Like, he'll isolate himself, and then after she rejects him twice, she rejects the bath tiles and the gold, and then he just starts straight up eating people. And I do agree, James had a good point saying that he just he becomes ravenous, and he's just consumed by consumption, but he's just consumed with, I feel like it must be it feels like guilt to me. This is the only way for him to be happy, is I have to get rid of all the things that make me feel bad, which are the people that don't accept me, that think I'm doing that don't sit down and praise me and don't appreciate me, which I think is very interesting.
I agree with that. I think, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, don't you think that would play into the theme about growing up?
Yeah.
Because growing up, you have this reliance on always being impressive, or, making your parents happy, or your peers happy, your teachers happy. And so growing up in this society, when you're put out into the world, don't you think that his disparity comes from that reliance on us, depending on what society thinks of us all the time, and learning to be independent as a grown and mature person?
Yeah, and I definitely think when Chihiro helps him find that independence, that contentment with himself through her kindness, because she doesn't, she rejects him, but she's always somewhat polite about it. And so he doesn't feel, he only feels threatened by the rejection, not by her, like how he would only ask to talk to her, and how she seemed to be the only person that can calm him down, because that's like his one tie into that reality where he still feels like she's apart from the world that hates him, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I feel like him deciding like, okay, I will go on this quest with you on the beautiful train ride.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it was so good. If I can behave myself. And she definitely is like a harness and something that can like control that ravenous like consumption within him, the disparity.
Yeah. He almost reminds me a little bit of like almost like a Boo Radley from To Kill a Mockingbird kind of character. At least in the first half of the movie, where he's kind of on the sidelines trying to help out. He's trying to do what he thinks are helpful gestures to Chihiro, but she perceives them as kind of excessive, almost like kind of invasive of her privacy. But she sort of comes to terms with him after his whole rampage throughout the bathhouse, when she kind of forgives him, cause like he literally tried to eat her. Like let's not overlook that. And coming back to the train scene, I think the train scene is a beautiful example of everyone up to that point's growth as a character. And it'll be hard to talk about the train scene if we don't talk about some other things like to establish first. But the train scene is definitely something that I think it almost is like the culmination of the movie to me. Like it represents like everything that they've become.
That is for sure the climax of the movie. Although, like the point of the movie is she's trying to save her parents, but where you feel the most emotion is that train ride and that sort of journey that she goes on. I mean, because the most emotional that I felt is when she went to Zeniba's house. Is that the name of the nice witch?
Yeah.
Who was sort of painted as this evil character, but then we go and see her, and she's actually a really, really nice person. Yeah, it's a massive grandma energy. She is indeed a massive grandma.
Yes. Her head
really
is
big
huge.
head. I mean, but you go in there and you feel welcomed and loved, and it's sort of praising Chihiro and every single one of the characters for their growth throughout the entire film. Because in my opinion, No Face's biggest flaw is that he never really loved himself in a way. Mm-hmm. He's always seeking, as you guys all said beautifully, he's always seeking approval from other people, and he thinks that the easiest way to go about it is through gold, which is how he tries to bribe everyone with increasing amounts of this. Like, some sort of monetary incentive will somehow get people to see who he really is. But he sticks to Chihiro because she doesn't accept that. She sort of sees through that, and her own greed, which she is shown not to be very greedy, actually.
Yeah.
Her own lack of greed sort of plays into her not buying No Face's thing, and he's sort of confused by this, that she can't accept him based on that. And when he goes through the rampage and she forgives him, as I think it was you said that, as James said, it's this moment where they both sort of realize the true personality of the other. And No Face is like, the only way that I'll be able to get other people to like me is to like myself and to not feel like I always need to be needed so much. But he's happy to help other people.
Yeah.
So when you see that all culminated in their leaving of him with Zeniba, it just really tugged at my heartstrings. It was such a lovely moment, and those are smattered throughout the entire film.
Yeah. I think the whole movie is about how all these characters and all these spirits are growing. And I think it's kind of funny that we were able to, it's almost a testament to the quality of the movie that we were able to squeeze so much out of No Face just now, when he's really, in the grand scheme of the movie, most of the characters aside from Chihiro really are not that huge. Like,
No, you're right.
Chihiro's, like No Face maybe has like 30 minutes of screen time. And it's kind of, it just sort of goes to show like how insightful and how beautiful this movie is, where you can learn so much from so little. I would love to talk about Chihiro as a character, and
Yes.
I think her growth is beautiful. How she sort of goes from a scared, hesitant little girl into someone who's courageous and brave and forgiving. I think forgiveness is like one of the main things that she displays, especially on the train scene where she's, seen in happy and content. She's sitting right next to the monster who tried to eat her 5 minutes ago, right? And they're buddy. She has displayed this almost like this ability to forgive others. I think Chihiro acts mainly throughout the movie almost as like she sort of helps all these kind of wayward spirits, Haku, No Face, the river spirit, you could almost argue Yubaba. She's almost like, through her growing, she's touching all these other spirits and having them grow. She's like the catalyst for everything in this movie.
She goes from being incredibly selfish. I mean, her entire goal in the beginning of the movie is trying to get her parents, but as you said, she begins to help these spirits, and as she does it, she becomes better at it. She grows more passionate for it, and she grows from being selfish to kind and caring, and that's just like a major theme in the movie, as you said, is incredible growth. And a little beat that you reminded me of there that I thought was really interesting is I really did not like Chihiro in the beginning of the movie, but I really liked Haku. And when we first see them, you're instantly drawn to Haku because of how amazing he is.
He's so cool.
But by the end of the movie, you think Chihiro is cooler.
Yeah, Haku is an interesting character to me. In the beginning, he's just kind of this slick, smooth, just the embodiment of cool. He's can do magic, and he turns into a dragon, and he's just this awesome. He kind of rescues Chihiro from the fear that she encounters her first time in the spirit world. He's like her initial guide, but like you're instantly drawn to him. Like, man, who's this guy? Like, he's so cool. But throughout the movie, you sort of learn more about him and learn that he might not be the pure good person you think him to be. We learn that he is kind of the evil witch Yubaba, the head of the bathhouse. We kind of learn that he's like her hitman who does the dirty work. And so you're sort of faced with this conflict. Like, he appeared to be this really kind-hearted and cool-headed guy, but you sort of also are hearing that he's not good and he's just a slave to Yubaba, and you sort of see that come together towards the end when Chihiro tells Haku his real name, which I can't remember what it is, but they're falling.
It was some river name.
Yeah, the name of some river, because it turns out Haku's a river.
And a dragon.
Plot twist.
He's a river and a dragon and a boy, all wrapped into one cool guy package. But and you sort of learn that Haku really wasn't himself for the whole movie, and it's not till Chihiro really bonds with him in that one-to-one moment towards the end of the film where she sets him free, and she gives him his sense of identity and freedom back, and I thought that scene was so beautiful to me. I think identity is one of the biggest, I don't know if I'd call it a theme so much as like a motif or recurring element between the whole the contracts that Yubaba gives to the workers, where she takes their name. Could almost be taken as like they're losing their sense of identity, and throughout the movie, I think it's their journey to come into themselves and really own their identity, and we see that through Chihiro and literally through Haku learning his name, and almost No Face is probably one of the most literal demonstrations of lack of identity, right? His name is literally No Face. He has no defining features. His face is a mask. He doesn't have a voice until he eats this frog man and speaks through the frog's voice. There are so many things in this movie about knowing who you are and accepting yourself and coming into your own, and I think that's really potent.
Ironically, the greatest magic in the entire film is not a river spirit or some strange thing in the bathhouse. It's Chihiro's love and kindness for other people. that she learns to give to others. It's and as you said, identity's a massive thing in the entire film. She loses her name. She signs her name away. She becomes Sen.
Yeah.
For most of the movie. And the whole name thing I wasn't entirely clear on for the movie, cuz so the only two characters that lost their name were her and Haku.
So I think if I get it right, it's implied that anyone who works in the bathhouse
Lost their name.
has their
Yeah.
name. Yeah, Yubaba has their name. And,
Okay.
And I think Haku explains it as like, if you forget what your original name is, you can never break the contract. You're stuck in the bathhouse forever. Which is why I don't know what it is about it, but Haku's like whole like don't forget your name speech. I don't know why that was so emotionally like big to me, because it's almost like he's speaking directly to the audience. Like, you know,
Yeah.
he's speaking to Chihiro in the sense of the story, like, oh, don't forget your name, or else you know, you'll be stuck here forever. But it's almost kind of like literally the message of the movie. Like, remember who, like, as you're growing up in this strange new world, remember who you are, right? And don't forget that. And I thought that was really beautiful. There's a lot of stuff I love in this movie.
As you change as a person, you have to stay true to yourself. And
Yeah.
she although Chihiro goes through lots of major changes, she is still herself by the end of the film. She still displays the same characteristics, but twisted in a way where she's now using them in a positive manner. Her energy, which was before nervous, is now sort of either tamed and calm in some situations, or energetic and happy, and she just turns out to be a better person, but she doesn't lose who she is as her own person. She doesn't lose who she is as a person. And one of the ways that the movie explains that is through shots and visual metaphors. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on some of the shot compositions in the film, and maybe some of the reasons why they designed characters a certain way. So, Hallie, did any shots stick out to you specifically as this is conveying some sort of message?
Oh, wow. Let's see. I know there's a lot of aerial shots. I know that feeling of wind and fluidity throughout the movie, because there's never, like, we did a podcast recently on Napoleon Dynamite. Click up in the corner if you want to go see that. But anyways, in that movie, I'm thinking, in that movie, there's so many still shots to really reveal the raw reality of that. But then looking at this movie, you see this fluidity, like we're being traveled through, like we're brushing by this whimsical world, and we're being able to breathe it in almost. And I think that's one of the main things, because when she's running through the fields, you know, with her parents, you know, you're running with her, along with her, and I feel like that was a key factor in making this big experience that we're all talking about here.
Yeah, it's almost like you've kind of just been whisked along, and you're here for the ride with Chihiro. Like, you're just kind of being thrown around through this crazy spirit world. And I think the camera has a lot of fluidity. Like, when she's running through the flower field with Haku, there's this psychedelic shot that winds through the flowers as it, like, symmetrically kind of parts.
Yes.
I don't know
So
how to
beautiful.
describe it. It's just crazy.
And wasn't that like the only, like, in the running shots, those were the only, like, 3D-ish, like, in the
They had some for the
background?
cars. In some of the very first shots of the film, they had some 3D animation in the cars, but yeah, for some reason, although it's 3D animated, it still blends really well into the movie. And that idea of motion, which you've just made me realize, if the whole movie's about growth, it was a really smart decision to make the camera about motion, because we're going through life, and it's not about sort of quick cuts to different parts of it. Although the story is sort of like that a little bit, where we get vignettes of her life in the workhouse, although it does flow really well. Life is more this sort of coursing river, and maybe I can somehow tie that into the river theme that keeps going on there. I'll have to think about that for a little
we have
bit.
River Dragon Boy,
River Dragon Boy,
Haku, and then we just have a different river spirit that she also meets.
who is stuck up with mud. Huge environmental
I
message,
have
by
a
the way.
name.
Oh, you have a name.
What is his
Let's get the
name?
name first.
Okay, it's Kawa no Kami.
Kawa no Kami. I've ventured to say that as white as possible. He is probably the character that best represents the environmental message of the film.
He's a dragon.
And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. Did you think that they handled it correctly? Do you think it was too obvious, or perhaps not obvious enough, or like just anything to say on that?
Yeah, I think it was very like as non-subtle as it was. I mean, it was literally like, here's this huge pile of mud. Let's depollute him, and he turns out to be this beautiful river spirit. I mean, it's very clearly like, pollution bad, nature and the environment is good. But I think, based on my very, very, very small knowledge on like Shinto and everything, it's very focused on nature and sort of being one with the environment. And so I think it's less of a blatant environmentalist message so much as it more is just like more of a reflection of the culture and the kind of the world in which it takes place. But I do think it is, an important message to spread,
for sure.
about the environment and all that jazz.
Yeah, the movie's incredibly ingrained in its culture, so I don't think, unless we like research the heck out of Japanese culture and Shinto religion and things like that, we will ever be able to find all the messages in there. Because I feel like the naming thing, it felt a little bit foreign to me. So I feel like there's probably something more significant there with, if you're a Japanese viewer. There's lots of cultural things that I don't think that we necessarily picked up on just because we're from the U.S.
Yeah.
And we don't understand a lot of that. But I think you're entirely right about the environmental message. Studio Ghibli has always had this fascination with nature.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Princess Mononoke.
Which I have never seen.
Neither have I. Looks amazing.
Looks amazing. If you guys want us to watch that, then please tell us. We're always taking requests for movies. But Studio Ghibli has this obsession with nature. And it's a beautiful obsession because they find the beauty in life from its own creations and not from what man has made. Which is a little bit ironic considering they are making a film to artificially show these creations. We just got super meta there.
Oh, man.
Sorry for it.
But,
and there's this thing where the spirits are afraid of humans, right? Like Chihiro, when she first crosses into the spirit world, she has to hold her breath, otherwise everyone's going to freak out and realize she's a human. She stinks as well.
Yeah.
It's sort of like this negative connotation that goes on with them.
yeah.
And what is the significance of trains in the movie? They pop up a lot. Originally, the family's looking for a train station, and then we do have that amazing train scene, which I feel like we have to delve further into, because that's so incredibly beautiful. But is a train sort of a transition period in someone's life? Or are they going up to a train in order to fulfill some sort of goal that they've set out for themselves? Like, what's the deal with trains?
Well, I think since as a rider of a train,
Ooh, yeah, here we go. Experience.
Having ridden a train
having
before.
ridden a train before. So I think a train's all about like where you are and where you're going and how long it's going to take you.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so I feel like it is about the fluidity of everyone's stories and how like especially with Lynn, how all she ever talks about, but her main goal is to get on a train and like never come back, which is a good like metaphor-ish, saying like I don't want to be where I am currently, and this is like traveling and going outside my normal is the only way to like get there. If that makes any sense.
I think you brought something up really, really good with Lynn, especially in relation to the train scene, because I sort of talked before about how I think the train scene is like the emotional, it's like the point in the movie where it shows you the most growth in all of these characters. Chihiro is forgiving No Face. No Face is learning to be accepted by Chihiro. And Lynn, whose primary motivation is to get herself out of there. She's very... She really is only concerned with her own well-being and her getting herself out of there, which makes it all the more impactful when Lynn is the one who takes Chihiro to the train and sends her off.
Yeah.
I thought that was really... It's like... She stopped thinking about herself and her own wishes and is gonna help Chihiro accomplish her own journey instead. And I thought that was really nice. even in small characters like Lynn, you still get growth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, do you think since the Boiler Man had been like sitting on those tickets for like 40 something years?
Yeah, come on.
Like Kamaji, do you think that he like intended to give them to Lynn, or were they for himself?
Ooh.
We're probably in the land of speculation a little bit there.
Speculation. Well, what makes more sense thematically? I think we can use to answer that question. So would it make more sense that perhaps he did have them for himself all those years and something was holding him back that he never got to go over? Perhaps he never overcame his obligation, or he never found his identity. And he finds that some people are more willing to change, so he decides to give them a chance. Or if he always had the plan for him to give them to Lynn, then I would ask, why not sooner? Or to give to other people, why not sooner?
Yeah, Kamaji's kind of like to me at least, I always saw him as like a granddad, kind of like caring character. He's kind of looking out for the little guy, and the little guy in this case is Chihiro. Like he's sort of the first spirit besides Haku, who she gets into real contact with, and he kind of is the one. He gives her a little bit of a hard time, but he's the one who's like, all right, yeah, let her in, go get her a job, and then he gives her the tickets. So I think he was probably sitting on them, waiting for almost like who's the most worthy, to leave, almost in a way. I don't have a ton of thoughts on that. I don't know about Hallie.
I was
or
just
Charlie.
curious if anyone had like.
Well, yeah, I feel like there's this big underlying theme that we keep bringing up about selfishness and the meaning of it. You know, like with this character, like, is he really selfishly, greedily taking these tickets? And then with Lynn, she's giving away her dream and watching someone else fulfill it, and that transformation, that growth from selfishness, to humbleness through finding someone's identity. I think that's one of the overall things I'm getting from this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really just a work of art, right? From the visuals to the soundtrack.
Oh yeah, you have to talk about the soundtrack.
The soundtrack is just beautiful. It's just so pretty. Miyazaki piano is something that I will never get over, and there's this almost it acts as Chihiro's theme. It's this piece from the soundtrack called "The Name of Life." Very fitting for the movie and identity and naming and life. The Name of Life. It sort of acts as Chihiro's theme, and they kind of sprinkle that little melody in whenever she's doing something big or something related to her growth as a person, right? We first hear it when she's the selfish little girl in the car not wanting to move. We hear it when she's entering into the spirit world. We hear it when on the train. No. We hear it in the flower field when she's sitting with Haku and he's reminding her, like, remember who you are, don't forget your name. All these really pivotal moments for Chihiro, and you hear this beautiful piano piece. And I don't have anything groundbreaking to say there. It's a theme. They use it like a theme.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful theme. It's just good old-fashioned scoring done amazingly.
Yeah, every aspect of the movie works in concert. Haha, music pun. To deliver this message, and it's just a pure movie that I find it hard to talk about, because we all came into this, and this is like honest time right here. We had no clue what we were gonna say. Like, I think Casey and James had like one thing they wanted to say, and then Hallie and I just had absolutely no idea. And it's because we're so floored by this movie. Above all, I know I said this before, it's an experience. You can't listen to us talk about this movie without having seen it to understand what you're going through, because it's such incredibly a visual film and an auditory film that you have to just take it in. You just have to, like, set aside however long the movie is, 2 hours, 2-ish hours.
Yeah, a little over 2 hours.
Do yourself a favor and do that, because this movie is one that will teach you things that you didn't know about yourself, no matter what age you are. If you're a child or a teenager or you're already an adult, you can reflect back on it and learn from it. You can learn how to take your worst qualities and mold them into something that you can be proud of and use to help other people. You can find your own identity through yourself.
And you can remember your name.
That's the most important important message in the entire movie.
Yeah, I'm realizing now that if you haven't seen this movie and you're listening to this podcast, a lot of the plot beats that we're talking about probably sound pretty bizarre, like Dragon
Yeah.
River Boy. Yeah, so the structure and the narrative of the movie is really weird and probably doesn't make a lot of sense if you haven't seen it. It's not at all really a traditional, like, hero's journey / like rising action climax. That kind of doesn't really apply here. It's more of just like an anthology of fun little misadventures in the bathhouse that are kind of loosely connected, but at the same time, just this fun, weird, beautiful mess of endearing stories about spirits and being spirited away.
Being spirited away. Does anyone else have any concluding thoughts on the film before I wrap it up? No? Well,
That's the perfect way to end it.
yeah, I think that's the perfect way to end it. It is an incredible film. You absolutely must see it. And if you absolutely want to see more of us, because I know that's what you came here for,
Yeah.
then please go check out the other videos on our channel. We have other podcast episodes. We have only one video essay right now, but we have some in the works currently. We also have an Instagram account by the same name, Socratic Cinema, where we post behind-the-scenes footage and updates where you can see what videos we're going to do next. Please tell us if you have any requests in the future for any new videos. And please give us some constructive criticism or feedback or anything. We always love that. We're always trying to improve ourselves.
Yeah, leave a comment, like, subscribe, hit the bell.
Hit the bell.
Do all those things. Follow on Instagram. Tell all your friends.
Yeah.
Post about
Yell
us.
at them.
Tag us.
Beat them.
Tell everyone you know.
Make them understand.
Yeah, hashtags. Tag us. Like, if you like us and you want to see more of us,
Put our logo on
Yeah.
a shirt and wear it.
spread the word. Socratic Cinema, we're here.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and we're out.